guys, this is Jay. Thought today I'd do something a little bit different. I do the page 112 tag, which I learned about through Steve Donahue and Shawn the Book Maniac. This is the idea of this tag is you read page 112 of three books and sort of give your impressions of them and which one you might read first next or something like that. I don't know if I'm going to read any of these next. I guess we'll see if they really inspire me or not. It's taken from the idea of a French literary prize where they would take in the books just solely by looking at that page 112 and from those choose which books to actually use for the prize. The idea being that once you get all the way into a book to page 112, well, by that point, people perfectly hone the beginning of their book and, probably really pay attention to getting that ending right. But that page 112, that's a sort of the sweet spot where you actually get to see what the writer is actually like and what their book actually is and, whether it's good or not or anything. So ideally, you're supposed to do this blind. What I did is I shut my eyes and just took some books off of my shelf. Without looking at them, keeping my eyes shut. Unfortunately, I peeked at one point and I saw, it's Virginia Woolf to the Lighthouse, so I had to put that back, which would have been an interesting one to come upon on page 112 about. And so let's see what these books are, what these books are like. So page 112 of my very first one. I'm just I've got everything kind of wrapped up in this, so it's probably going to have their name on places and stuff like that. I'm going to try and keep my thumb on stuff. But yes, here's page 112. Bliss. Was it in that dawn? Lucia's absence was increasingly puzzling for Alander, and it did nothing to ease the ache in his heart. Cleo Sampson's name stayed with him as he came down from the recording. At least we know what to expect from her. Hazel's words echoed in his thoughts. What had she meant? What was special about Sampson in the mission he had just visited? In Astria, he'd been forced to erase her engram when she sabotaged the mission. Driven to psychosis by orders buried in her subconscious by Unispro itself, she'd been compelled to attempt to force Alexander to return to Earth in order to notify her superior of the discovery of alien life. The overpowering conflict between her orders and those of the mission supervisor, Carol Hazitz, had split her mind apart like a walnut, almost killing everyone in the process. No one had known who the traitors were at the beginning of each mission. Some had frozen when news arrived that Earth had been destroyed, unable to operate around orders insisting that they report to the superiors that no longer existed. Others were still unknown. Alander didn't doubt that out of the thousand survey missions, he himself had been one such unospresso operative. It could have literally been any one of the 60 surveyors, even Hazitz, although he was sure she would never see herself above such treachery. Donald Shriven, ... Maybe this wasn't a catalogue of colonies and colonists after all, he thought, but rather a roll call of traitors. Was that what Hazlitt was disseminating among the various versions of himself? He had thought that the Congress of Orphans Axford had referred to might be the beginnings of a group mind composed of the fragments of her engrams. The original Hazlitt had, after all, been part of a much larger being and soul, a being composed of many diverse parts, and as far as beyond his comprehension as he was to a dog. So it wouldn't have surprised him if it had turned out that she wanted to establish a similar network again. Okay, so that was the first reading. Obviously something from my science fiction selections. Kind of an avalanche of names. Sort of has a bit of a dry style, a bit of an onrush. I don't know if I'd if I'd be super thrilled to continue reading it. Uh, I sort of like the paranoia in it. I guess there's a certain kind of a crazy, like, what the hell's going on kind of feel to it. You have to wonder if it's some Philip K. Dick or whatever. So yeah, that was the first one. I don't know if I'm super attracted to it. So let's go on to number two. Trying to keep everything for myself. Again, trying to put my thumb over top of stuff so I don't see what it is. She approached the bar and then stopped. Behind it was the biggest mirror Granny had ever seen. She stared fixedly at it, but it seemed safe enough. Well, she'd have to risk it. She hunched her back a little more and addressed the barman. "Excuse-moi, young homme," she began. The barman gave her a disinterested look and went on polishing a glass. "What can I do for you, old crone?" he said. There was only the faintest suggestion of a flicker in Granny's expression of elderly imbecility. "Oh, you can understand me," she said. "We get all sorts on the river," said the barman. "Then I was wondering if you could be so kind as to loan me a deck. I think it's called of cards?" Quavered Granny. "Going to play a game of old maid, are you?" said the barman. There was a chilly flicker across Granny's eyes again as she said, "No, just patience. I'd like to try and get the hang of it." He reached under the counter and tossed a greasy pack towards her. She thanked him effusively and tottered off to a small table in the shadows, where she dealt a few cards randomly on the dark ringed surface and stared at them. It was only a few moments later that a gentle hand was laid on her shoulder. And so, yeah, that's a little less compressed of a page 112. It's Granny. I have a feeling I know what this is from, and I think it kind of hints at, yes, Granny's probably isn't a doddering old lady, and it certainly reads a lot easier than the first one, and has a certain of its intelligence, because I think I know where I'm going with this one, and I would most certainly, I've read quite a bit of this author and would read quite a bit more by him. So, yes. Let me go. This is the problem about pulling things off my own shelf. I may have actually read them already. So let's take a look at the third one. Page 112. This one hopefully does not have names or things on the top or bottom of the pages. Okay. All right. There was no sound but Laren working at the lock, and no motion but the steady wind that kicked up the courtyard dust and flapped the 7 grey pennants that hung along each wall. Shara shivered with sudden loneliness. Laren opened the door. No room inside, only a wall of moving fog, a fog without colour or sound or light. "Your gate, my ladies," the singer said. Shara watched it, and she watched it so many times before. What world was next, she wondered. She never knew. Maybe in the next one she would find Kedar. She felt Laren's hand on her shoulder. "You hesitate," he said, his voice soft. Shara's hand went to her knife. "The guardian," she said suddenly. "There is always a guardian." Her eyes darted quickly around the courtyard. Laren sighed. "Yes, always. There are some who try to claw you to pieces, and there are some who try to get you lost, and some who try to trick you into taking the wrong gate. There are some who hold you with weapons, some with chains, some with lies, and there is one, at least, who tried to stop you with love. Yet he was true for all that, and he never sang you false." And with a hopeless, loving shrug, Laren shoved her through the gate. Did she find him in the end, her lover with the eyes of fire? Or is she searching still? What guardian did she face next? When she walks at night, a stranger in a lonely land, does the sky have stars? I don't know. He doesn't. Maybe even the seven do not know. They are powerful, yes, but all power is not theirs, and the numbers of the world is greater than even they can count. There is a girl who goes between the worlds, but her path is lost in legend by now. Maybe she is dead, and maybe not. Knowledge moves slowly from world to world, but not all of it is true. But this we know: an empty castle below a purple sun, a lonely minstrel waits and sings of her. So that one's definitely got a lot more of a romantic feel to it. It's obviously, again, fantasy. You can kind of tell with the names and just the situation of being pushed through the gate. I kind of like the part about him listing, the ways of holding, of getting entrapped, and the love, and you thinking that, the guy who's speaking is actually one of these fellows and has trapped her by love and pushed her through. So that was not bad. I actually I cheated there. I skipped on just to the last couple of sentences of that at the end because it was 3. So yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah, the first one, I definitely had my hesitations about it. It was definitely going to be a challenge. It would be a challenging read for me, whatever it was. My guess is that number 2 is most likely my Terry is probably from my Terry Pratchett section, and that's Granny Weatherwax. Here, let's take a look at number 2. And indeed, yes, Terry Pratchett, Witches Abroad. So yes, big favorite of mine, and you could tell from that writing there that's Terry, and someone I read a lot of, even though he's actually someone who even a couple of years before I knew that he was starting with he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. His books had definitely started going downhill in just how well they were held together. He is, light, humorous author who was very passionate and very super intelligent, sharp fellow. And unfortunately, as that sharpness went, the books got a little bit more baggy. I'm very curious to see. Let's see what the first one is. That was number 1 was Orphans, was Shawn Williams and Shane Dix, Orphans of Earth. Which I can't say it really appealed to me. I think I picked it up because of Shawn Williams. Let's see if it actually says something about the fellows here. Yes. Shane Dix has been writing fiction since he was 15. In addition to science fiction, he has been published in mainstream stories, poetry, and articles about the state of SF and film and television. And Shawn Williams has been writing full-time since 1990. He has over 50 short stories and 3 novels published. He has won both of Australia's major SF awards, Aurealis and Ditmar. And to me, it sounded like sort of Samuel Delaney, kind of like, but not with sort of the poetry. I don't know if I would actually read this. It was like meh, because that's what it sounded like. Oh, is this kind of bad Delaney? And well, it's not Samuel Delaney. And the third one that had that kind of romance feel to it was that softy himself, George R. R. Martin, with Songs of Stars and Shadows, which it's interesting. He has some of his other books that I've read, short story wise. I can't even see it here. There is one of his full length novels that definitely had this sort of a bit of a Knights of Chivalry kind of feel to it, which is interesting in a fellow who's known for his gritty dark, the original gritty dark. I'm gonna murder everybody in my books, and you better not be attached kind of feel to it. But so yes, that's this is a collection of short stories by him, and I read, I guess page 112 was the very last bit of a story that was written in Chicago, May 1964. And what was that story? Let's see if I can find the beginning. The Lonely Songs. The Lonely Songs of Laren Dorr. So, yes. That was... It definitely sounded like George R.R. Martin. I think I it's funny. I probably would go of the ones of these three. I would probably definitely start off with my with Terry Pratchett, and then Songs of Stars and Shadows. When I'm in the mood for some George R.R., I probably would do that. And yeah, I have to say Orphans of Earth, which I'm pretty sure I got darn cheap because it looks like it's a library cast off. I having read that page 112, I can't say I'm particularly motivated to actually pick this up, and this is actually something I might just put back into the great pool for someone else to find. So yes, maybe page 112 is useful. So yeah, that's my page 112 tag video. I'm probably going to go back and see if this is at all watchable or if it's just me reading long passages and being incredibly boring. Because I need to work on my reading things. But I'll leave my meta critique of the video for some other time. More videos later.